Our next speaker is Mike Smith, Senior Vice President, Growth and Strategy of Lamb Weston. Mike was named the Senior Vice President, Growth and Strategy back in September of 2016. Mike focuses on growing Lamb Weston's leadership position in frozen potatoes throughout a continued focus on industry-leading innovation, insights-based marketing, corporate strategy, and reputation management with direct oversight of the R&D, marketing, communication, and corporate strategy organizations. Mike's experience includes various leadership positions with Lamb Weston. Most recently, he served as Vice President and General Manager of Lamb Weston's retail, leading the growth and expansion of the branded and private labels business. Mike has also led Lamb Weston's global marketing organization as Vice President. Mike has managed private label business at Conagra Foods as Vice President and General Manager and held various marketing roles with Dean Foods and their White Wave division. Mike is a graduate of Brigham Young University and holds an MBA from the Cox School of Business at Southern Methodist University. With that, Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Dale. Dale set the bar very high, I guess, by having everyone come up to the front. So, hey, listen, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm thankful for the opportunity that I have to speak to you today. Thanks to the United Potato Growers for the opportunity to be here. I want to thank each one of you for your partnerships with the processing community. It goes a long way to success that the group has. We have a great product in frozen potatoes, especially French fries. And I'm going to give you an update on kind of the outlook of the frozen French fry world. But like Dale said, my name is Mike Smith. I've been at Lamb Weston for about 10 years, held various roles, as he said, but currently lead our growth and strategy efforts. I actually grew up in Oregon, spent my summers on our family grain farm in southeastern Idaho, and so I have a lot of respect for the hard work that goes into growing some of these consumer staples. In fact, seeing the tractor up there brought back some memories, but I'll tell you, my rows were never straight. And I've been known to take some wide turns and take out some fences with the implements. So that's why I'm here, and I'm not back there on the farm. They won't have me out there anymore. So, about a year or so ago, a little over a year ago, we actually spun off as a standalone public company, Lamb Weston did. And with that, as an executive speaking up here, there's a disclaimer that goes along with that. So today I'm going to walk you through a number of charts and data facts and things like that have to do with the frozen potato category. They're all based in third-party facts. I'll give you kind of some background on them. But it is important to note that the things I'm going to talk about here today don't reflect the views, the opinions, the policy, or position of Lamb Weston. But today I'll talk about the category and what's going on. I won't be talking about Lamb Weston up here today. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. The global potato category is growing quite well. It's been up over the last several years, and Euromonitor projects that this category is going to continue to grow over the next several years. Essentially what Euromonitor is it's a third-party group that use both quantitative and qualitative methodologies to come up with these forecasts. They not only look at frozen potatoes, but they look at dairy categories and cheese and eggs and proteins, both food categories and non-food categories. And when it comes to some of the big countries, they look at the quantitative data. So they'll look at import and export data. They'll look at industry data that's available to them. But for some of the smaller countries that there's less data, they'll use more of a qualitative approach. And what I mean by that is they'll have conversations with large restaurant operators or large restaurant chains. They'll talk to industry experts about growth in certain markets. And they triangulate all that data to come up with some of these growth rates. The great thing, and the thing I get excited about with this data, is that not only are we seeing growth in emerging markets, which you'd expect, as they have more disposable income, more folks start to enter the workforce, and they're looking for convenient solutions. But we're also seeing growth in the large core markets as well, like North America and Europe. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we jump into this data. As I look at, as I start to break this down into the markets, you can see that North America remains the largest market for frozen potatoes. And you see the growth rate, Euromonitor has it down at about 1%. If I look at some of the other data sources that we look at here in North America, over the last 12 to 18 months or so, that number's been closer to 2%. And if I put that 2% into perspective for you, Euromonitor's calling the category here in North America at about 12 billion pounds. 2% on 12 billion pounds every year is about 240 million pounds of potatoes. So if you think about, the processing community and all the new announcements of new fry lines that you've been hearing about, it takes about one new fry line to keep up, one new fry line a year in the industry to keep up with the demand of, 240 million pounds. These new large-scale fry lines that you hear announcements about, they do about 250 to 300 million pounds of fries a year. Now you can see some of these other markets, established markets like Australia and Europe, they continue to grow at modest levels. And a lot of that's just because they're more developed markets. When you start to look at some of the emerging markets there, like Asia, Latin America, Middle East, you can see that the growth rates are much higher. Now keep in mind that's on a much lower base, but the drivers of that, as you think about in some of these markets, this is where the large multinational QSRs, and when I use the word QSR, I'm talking about quick service restaurants or fast food restaurants, they're starting to enter these markets or have been in these markets, but they're continuing to expand and add stores or add units in restaurants. That's driving more accessibility to fries in these markets, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the things that I get really excited about and I like to see and look at is per capita consumption of users in these different markets. And what I mean by that is if you look at the very bottom line here at the 28 pounds, that says that the U.S., on average, U.S. consumer consumes about 28 pounds of French fries per year. Now there's some other markets that have some high consumption rates like that. Primarily the UK comes to mind, Australia comes to mind. You can see that Europe also has high consumption rates. But when you start to look at some of those emerging markets, they have very low per capita consumption. And the reason why is the accessibility to French fries. So as I said before, as these large multinational chains start to move into these markets, continue to open new restaurants, it makes fries more accessible. And when I talk about these large multinationals, I'm talking about the big names that you see here when you walk up and down the streets that are going to some of these other countries. But it's also the local QSRs that are starting to grow and make fries more accessible in some of these markets. And when I talk about the local QSRs, these aren't onesie-twosie mom-and-pop restaurants. Some of these local QSRs will have 1,000 restaurants. We'll have 1,500 restaurants in some of these markets like Southeast Asia and in China. China, for example, is actually in the Asian number here. And you can see it has a low per capita consumption. Now, there's markets in there that, like Japan, that are more developed, that has a higher per capita. Same with the Middle East. An area like Saudi Arabia has a higher per capita. Some of the other countries in the Middle East have a lower per capita. But if you think about China, for example, with a population of about 1 billion people, if you could get per capita consumption to increase by 1 pound, so just a few servings of fries per year, that's a lot of incremental French fries out there, 1 billion pounds a year of incrementality. So that's why I start to get excited about those numbers. I'm nursing a scratchy throat, so I'm going to have to take a few drinks through this. I apologize. So, that's why I get excited about that. If I double-click down a little bit into North America, as I before mentioned, the growth's we're continuing to see growth in North America. Now, obviously in a developed market, it becomes increasingly more difficult to find growth in areas like North America, but we continue to grow. And as I said before, over the last 12 to 18 months or so, we're seeing these numbers, closer to 2%. As I think about these QSRs, so the quick service restaurants that are trying to grow their traffic and bring new users and new consumers back into the category, we've seen them revert back to some of the value menus or the dollar menus. And the great thing about that is as a consumer goes to a restaurant and consumes or buys a burger on the value menu, a lot of times they're adding fries to that as well. So we're starting to see, continued fry growth here because of that. Innovation is also important to the growth that we're seeing. And innovation, it doesn't mean a new cut of fry necessarily. Sometimes we'll see operators add a second fry to the menu. But when I talk about innovation, it's culinary innovation. What we're seeing a lot of growth from in North America is new usage occasions of fries. So seeing fries on the menu in different forms and in different ways. So I'm sure as you go to restaurants, you'll see more and more fries have different seasonings or toppings on them. You see them with cheese, you see them with bacon, you see them with a number of different toppings, and that's driving growth in North America. You know, the overall restaurant industry has been flat. It's been flat for a while, and it has some puts and takes along the way. This is actually NPD data. And I give you kind of a sense what NPD is. NPD CREST essentially is consumer reported data. So NPD has a group of consumers around the US. It's a representative sample. You know, I think they have smartphones or iPads or whatever, and essentially what they do is they capture every single time they go get something to eat. And they write down what it is they ate, you know, what time it was at, what it was, how much they paid for it, and where they actually ate the product. And they capture all this data, they throw it into a big database. Folks like myself buy this information and try and make smart decisions using this information. But as I said, the traffic's been flat over the last several years. And the puts and takes, you'll see full service restaurants, casual dining have actually been down a little bit, while there have been a few runs where the QSR restaurants have actually seen traffic growth. I think QSR, the recent few quarters has actually been flat. But you can see that 80% of fry servings are coming from that QSR channel, which I don't think is too surprising for anyone. The great news is that we're starting from a really good spot. So French fries are an important piece of a restaurant's menu. In fact, about 1 in 5 orders have a serving of French fries a part of it. Now, I think that 18% there is actually frozen fries. If I add other frozen potato products into that number, like hash browns and frozen hash brown patties and dices and different products like that, I think that number gets a little closer to 25%, which means 1 in 4 restaurant orders actually have some sort of frozen potato a part of it. So you start to get really excited about the staying power and the importance of frozen potatoes on restaurant menus moving forward. You know, about 60% of menus actually include French fries. And if you're like me, because every time I see this number, I say to the folks that provide it to me, that can't be right, that seems too low. Every restaurant I go to has fries on the menu. And if you think about it, there's a lot of restaurants out there that still don't have fries. If you think about the big coffee, donut, sandwich chains that are out there in the marketplace, and that starts to make that number feel right. And the important piece about this is as operators are trying to drive traffic back to their restaurants, and they're managing the profitability of their business, fries is one of the most profitable food items on the menu. And so they need fries as they continue to grow their business and move it forward. And it's not just operators that like fries and need fries. The great news is that consumers love fries as well. And as you look across all generational segments, fries is one of the top 5 most ordered items on a restaurant menu. And so the thing I like about this is consumption of fries isn't just coming from the boomer generation that we have to worry about in a few years being smaller and smaller. It is across all generations, consumers love fries. And so consumers love fries and operators love fries. And fries have significant staying power on those menus, which is important. So as I think about some opportunities out there, and really these opportunities could probably cross several of the potato businesses that you guys are talking about today or will be talking about in the future. You can see technology and innovation and some of the consumer trends that are changing, new channels, et cetera. And I'll dive into each one of these just briefly. If you think about innovation, innovation isn't all the same. Innovation is important in many categories to drive growth, whether it's food, non-food, whatever it is. We learned about some innovation today from the folks at John Deere. Innovation and the things that we're doing here in the North American and the U.S. market, it's important to remember that those things may not work in some of these other emerging markets. So you think about the consumer flavor palette in markets like the Southeast Asia. There's things that we're doing here in the U.S. that aren't going to work in those markets. And so as we think about innovation, it's going to cross boundaries and cross global markets. The other thing is that a lot of times we think about innovation as being just product innovation. And if there's one thing you take away from here today, that is innovation is all up and down the commercialization stream. And so innovation in supply chain, in distribution, innovation in growing processes, improving yields and those types of things are all important to keep up with the demand that I was talking about on those prior slides. Okay. The other area that I really think is helped out the potato market a lot is technology. And what I mean by that is, smartphones are now they're going on. I think iPhone just had their 10-year anniversary. And so, before consumers love fries, as I mentioned before, and before, if you went to a restaurant and had a great fry experience, had a great sauce that went with it, or was topped with some fancy stuff, and you said, man, that's great. You'd have to remember to go to work the next morning and maybe tell your friends sitting around the water cooler. You may, if you really loved it, you'd pick up the phone and maybe you'd call one of your friends and tell them about it. But now with technology and social media, if I love fries, I can take a picture of them. I can tell all 500 of my closest friends about the fries that I just had with 1 or 2 clicks. And that essentially is making fries, they're fun to share. People love them. They're craveable. You can top them. You can load them. You can do a number of different things with them. And people love to share that stuff. And that's making fries more and more relevant. In the spirit of technology, consumers are also using technology to find new types of flavors and food trends that are out there. If you think about the urban, the Yelps and the Pinterests of the world and the Instagrams of the world, consumers are going out and looking around. Today, if a family wanted to try a new potato variety or product or way to season it, they can go to Pinterest, which is a social media site, and look up a recipe and be able to try it at home. They can go to Facebook and look at a 2-minute video that shows them how to use French fries in a casserole or another product and things like that. And so it's really bringing the culinary aspect of food to people's homes. It's exciting. Today consumers want fries that have different toppings and seasonings. Some of these pictures up here, folks want fries that are topped with kimchi, or they want sriracha honey wedges, or they want palik paneer poutine. Say that 10 times fast. So all these different flavor ideas, consumers can learn about from social media. And it's an opportunity for all of us, whether it's patatas bravas or samosas or things like that. It's not just frozen potato category that's going to benefit from this. It's really all the potatoes across the board. There's also this other area of opportunity that I see, and I'm calling it new channels. New channels is probably not the right terminology. I couldn't think of something better. But essentially, it's all around this home delivery and food outside of a restaurant. What you see up here is a meal kit from Blue Apron. If you haven't or are not familiar with it, there's a whole host of these sites out there that have these meal kits. And essentially, you can go online and you can select one of these meal kits, and it will be delivered to your front door with all these ingredients, as well as a recipe, and you can cook it up and have a great meal at home. So on one end of the spectrum, you have these Blue Aprons, and you have these HelloFresh and all the other plethora of home delivery items that are out there. But on the other hand, you have all these home delivery technology platforms. So many of you have heard of Uber Eats. I think Uber Eats has doubled their reach in the last year. I think they provide delivery from over 50 or 60,000 restaurants now. It's unbelievable. In fact, I can take this smartphone and within a couple clicks could actually have a burger and fries delivered right here to the podium. So whether you're at, here making a presentation to you guys, at home, at work, at your kid's ballpark watching a game, with a few clicks, someone can bring you, fries, hamburgers, whatever it may be. And so it's really revolutionizing how you think about, at home, consumption occasions. And definitely huge opportunities as we think about that moving forward. I think the last area that I want to touch on is, emerging markets. They remain, extremely attractive. You saw the high growth rates, although they're on a small base. As I mentioned, these multinational QSRs are going out there and opening up new restaurants and units. And the reality is that in a lot of these countries, it's difficult to have a local supply to be able to make the products that these folks are looking for. So you think about there's challenges with access to water, there's labor challenges, there's seed regulations, there's all sorts of things. And so that means that for North America, it's going to remain an important part of the export market and keeping up with the growing demand outside of these core markets. I think the ability to deliver a finished product at a cost advantage will be important to North America maintaining their share of these emerging markets. Okay. At the end of the day, just to quickly summarize, we're playing in a great category. We're starting from a really good spot. So the fact that operators need fries on the menu, consumers love them across all generational segments, we got a lot of tailwinds in this category, and we're playing from the right side. There's new markets, there's new channels, and like I said, French fries continue to be a favorite across the board and across countries. And so there's tons of opportunity out there, whether it's innovation, technology, whatever it may be, a huge opportunity here in this space. So with that, I want to thank you for all of the support and look forward to partnering with many of you in the future as we continue to grow this space. We're excited about it, excited about the future of frozen potatoes. And with that, thank you very much.